Forensics Lecture 4-3, The Role of an Entomologist. The forensic entomologist is an investigator who studies the insects and their relation to a criminal investigation. They're used to determine the time of death, and this is carried out by observing the different stages of development of the maggots or the insect larvae, or how the sequence of the arrival of each type of insect. In determining the time of death, after decomposition starts, insects that feed on the dead tissue infest the body, usually within 24 hours. Most common are the blowflies. And they lay eggs in human remains that will hatch into maggots or larvae that will then consume the organs and tissues. One blowfly can actually lay up to 2,000 eggs. Any insect that feeds on dead tissue is called a necrophilious insect. And so there's a number of them, but the blowfly is the most common. When studying the insects and their stages, their larva stages through their life cycle, they can approximate how long a body has been left by studying the stages of them. And so by determining the most developed stage of the fly, post-mortem interval or PMI can be approximated. And this is the time that's elapsed since death. The development is not always straightforward. Cold temperatures can hinder the development of the flies. So things like location, climate, weather, the presence of drugs even can affect the development of the blowfly. So it's not always straightforward, but it, for the most part, gives a good estimate of time. The second type of insect that comes in are flies that are known as cheese skippers, and these are actually found in the later stages of decomposition after blowflies have left, and so this can indicate the body has a later post-mortem interval or PMI than previously thought. Predator insects then will show up to feed on the necrophilious insects. These are things like beetles. Next come the omnivore insects, and they feed on the dead body as well as insects and surrounding vegetation of the body. Last to arrive are the indigenous insects, whose presence is basically coincidental. Could be the spiders that are just moving about in their environment, but they're the ones who then show up at the very end, indicating that it's been there for quite some time. Other contributions that a forensic entomologist can give an investigation is the fact that as a general rule, insects will first colonize natural moist orifices, such as the mouth, the ears, the nose. If there's an open wound present, they're going to colonize there first because it's easier for the larva to gain the food from the tissue that way. But a lot of times what happens is because of decomposition, it conceals where the wounds are or if there is any wounds, but through colonization, the insects can basically give the location of any wound. So wounds on the hands, the forearm can indicate that there was indeed defensive wounds. Also that it may have been, injury may have been caused by a sharp object and so on. Another contribution that entomology can give an investigation is that the insects can actually show drugs that may be present in the body. As the insects feed on the remains, they can accumulate the drug that's in the flesh. And then analyzing the insects after they've been collected can identify the drug that may be present. So when collecting the insects, if possible, all insect evidence should be collected by a forensic entomologist. However, that's not always possible, and so as long as they're collected and carried out by an investigator with experience in death investigations, enough of them should be collected to aid in the investigation. When collecting the insects, they should all be taken from each area of the body, and then of course they need to be labeled to show where they were collected from, which will help to indicate time and cause of death. This is lecture 4-3. There will be a quiz next class.